Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yud Aleph and Yud Beis in Maseches Nedarim. So we left off by the mission at the bottom of Yud Amud Beis. So the mission at the bottom. Zok the Mishnah. Ha'omer lachulin she'oichel lecha. One who says lachulin. All right. Now, at this point in the Gemara will actually have a chiluk in two different interpretations. But lachulin, right, is really interpreted, right, because we go lechumna by nedarim, lo chulin, all right, not chulin, all right. Now the opposite of chulin is kadsher. Now we'll soon see that a person, if you go ahead and associate the permitted item with something that is usher through a vow, all right, through a neder, right, or through some sort of tfisa, such as a korban, right? You make a korban usher by a declaration, right? This animal is hektish, right? All of a sudden, I created that usher, right? That's different than, let's say, something as this item is like a treifa to me, right? Treifa is not something that's declared usher, right? So if he says la chulin, which is interpreted lo chulin, it's not chulin sha'eichel lecha. So not chulin, that which I eat of yours. In other words, like a korban, that which I eat of yours, right? Or he says lo kosher, or it's something that is not kosher, also, which refers to you're forced to say over here that it refers to something. Let's say by a korban not permitted, not.
I consider your stuff not kosher,
Right? Not kosher, but like we said earlier, like it can't just be like it's a treifa. It has to be something which is like, let's say kosher legabe, a korban. Right, a non-permitted korban to eat, right? Avalai dachi, right? Or something, right, which we say is not clean, right? Not tahor, right? If he says those cases, or another category says tahor, right? Vitame, naisar upigel, right? Or he says to him, that which I eat of yours is tahor, right, or tame, right, referring to the karbanos. Naisar upigel, something which is naisar, which is left over, right, by a karban, which becomes prohibited. Upigel, sure, 8 ounces, thank you. Or pigel, our pigel is isser that a person during part of the avoda, that a person decides to consume, right, beyond the zman, therefore the item comes prohibited through pigel, usser. All these cases are usser, right? So he says these cases, this item is usser. He says ki'imra, right, like a lamb, right, referring to a lamb that is a korban. That's what we assume he's doing. Ki'imra, or that I eat of yours, or kadirim, or like the pen that holds the animals that are kachim, or keitzim of the wood of the midas keishim, or the fires. All these are reference to a korban, kemizbeach, like the mizbeach, right? Always kehechal, kiyushalayim. So all these cases, another bechad mikol misham shem mizbeach, or anything that is used for the mizbeach. Apo pishala hizker korban, even if he didn't say korban, harei zeh another korban. That's considered to be another korban because it's referencing something that is associated with karbanos. A korban is kosher, which is usher. So therefore, that which I eat of yours is just like a korban, i.e., it's prohibited to me. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ha'Aimer Yushalayim lo Aimer Kru. Rabbi Yehuda says one who says Yushalayim, right, which was the last. If he says, right, we did mention that ki Yerushalayim, but if he says Yerushalayim lo Aimer Klum, he has not said anything. All right, so I have to soon see is Rabbi Yehuda arguing, right? Is it different than ki Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim is it different? He says this item is Jerusalem. Now Jerusalem perhaps could be synonymous with the Karbanos and Yerushalayim, and that was where the base of Mikdash is, and perhaps that would be usher. So, but nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Yerushalayim lo amar klum. Why was Torah usher? Because he mentioned an item, right? That in this case, even though it's clean, it really means that it's low tahor, right? It's not tahor in this case, or not clean, right?
I think the Ron says specifically, you just make the thing la tahor,
right? La tahor, right? Those with the positives, right? I think the round is actually actually in the top, right? Tahor, right? Kacha girsa, right? He brings down, right? Right. So he says something which is clean. So he says that has the lamed before it. So Ran inserts the lamed as if it was said, even though it wasn't stated in the Mishnah. Others would have to learn it that referencing to tahor, meaning it's not tahor, referring to the karbanos. But a good question. Like I said earlier, right? The Gemaras are difficult, but that lashon, right, which is not, there's no immediate change, on the side, but the Ryan goes into actually on Yud Aleph and Aleph. You'll see he has a mahalach in the mission over there. So let's see the Gemara.
Yeah.
So Sabur Mai Lachula. So I'm sorry.
It's the Makor. Oh,
yeah. So he says over here, right? So the Ran over here, he brings over here. If you look at the Ran, it says that he gears of kashav einai. That's the whole thing in the Ran, right? So the Gemara says, "So savuri my lechulin." What does lechulin mean? Lo lechulin, lehavi el lekorban. So top of Yud Aleph and Aleph. So it says over there that what does lechulin mean? Lo lechulin means it's not chulin lehavi el korban. Right? Rather, you infer it, right? That's a korban. So Mani Masnisen. So who is the author of Mishnah? Rabbi Meir. If it's Rabbi Meir, less like Mifal Ata Shemeh. So Rabbi Meir holds of a concept of that we do not infer when it comes to karbanos. Now that's a total inference, right? You're right. The implication is not. You say not chulin, right? Which implies, right? Not chulin. So the opposite, the inference from there is karba, right? So our Mishnah seems to be going according to that the one who says we do infer from the statement. Now, if he says not chulin, even though he never said anything about karba, he didn't mention it. Nevertheless, it must be that the shita of our Tana is that that we do infer, and therefore he's basically saying not chulin, but rather karba, right? So it can't be mani masisa ira meir less like a the Tanakh is learned in the Mishnah. Meir Aimer Kol Tanai Sheinu Ketanai Bnei Gad Bnei Ruve Einu Tanai. Any condition, right, or stipulation that's not spelled out, such as when the Bnei Gad Bnei Ruve, when they want to go ahead and take the land on the other side of the Yarden, they said if we go ahead and we battle, we'll take it, right? We'll get the land, and if we don't, and Moshe says if you don't go ahead and do it, then you don't get it. So it has to go both ways. Over here, it's not both ways. It's just one way. It's just that which you hear is not chulin, but he says that what you do over here yours is korban. So Ella Rabbi Yehuda, he must be Rabbi Yehuda. Same as Seifa. Let's look at the Seifa. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Ha'Aimer Yushalayim Lo Mer Klum. Rabbi Yehuda comes in. Oh, sure. Rabbi Yehuda comes in and says, right in the Seifa, the last line of the Seifa. He says, be the safer Rabbi Yehuda, but the fact all of a sudden we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda now, so Reisha, Lav Rabbi Yehuda, right? The Reisha is not Rabbi Yehuda, because why does he say Rabbi Yehuda Aimer is jumping at the end? So obviously Rabbi Yehuda is not in the Reisha. So Gemara answers, Kulo Rabbi Yehuda. No, the entire mission is Rabbi Yehuda. V'hachi K'ton is what it says, She Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Ha'Aimer Shalayim Lo Amar Klum, right? It's a continuation, right? That all these Kiyu Shalayim is Aser. Because Rabbi Yehuda holds Ha'omer Yushalayim. If he just says Yushalayim, right? That which I eat of yours should be like that which I eat of yours shall be Yushalayim to me. So that's not matis b'davar us, right? That's not matis something which is or davar neither, right? So and therefore he holds that it would be mutter, but everything else, right, which is mentioned in the Mishnah is aser, and that was all Rabbi Yehuda. But if he says Ki Yushalayim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is it Aser? Tani, we're going to Raisa. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Ha'Aimer Ki Yushalayim Lo Mar Klum Ad Sheidar B'Davar Hakara Yushalayim. So what do you mean? Rabbi Yehuda himself holds, right? If you say Ki Yushalayim Lo Mar Klum until he says B'Davar Hakara Yushalayim. So the Gemara says Kulo Rabbi Yehuda he betrayed Tanai Levi Rabbi Yehuda, right? Really, right? The entire Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, right? And there's two Tanayim, right? Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, that if you say, right, Kirush, excuse me, I read it wrong a little early, right? So he says, Lo Marklum Ad Sheidor Bedover Hakarev Be Yerushalayim, right? In Yerushalayim. In other words, something which is offered in Yerushalayim. Therefore, according to, even though our Mishnah, right, lists Ki Yerushalayim as Aser, that, and L'chari, we want to say that's Rabbi Huda. We see Rabbi Huda says you can't say Ki Yerushalayim, only Be Yerushalayim. The item is Aser like that which is in Yerushalayim, i.e. that which is offered in Yerushalayim. Ki Yerushalayim is not good enough. So that's Machlekes Rabbi Trei Tmar Rabbi Huda, right? If he says, right, Be Yerushalayim, according to some, that's not good enough. And there's only Be Yerushalayim is good enough, but Ki Yerushalayim is not good enough. That would not be in there. And our Mishnah holds like the other Tana, right, who learned from Rabbi Huda, that Ki Yerushalayim would be us. So therefore, Be Yerushalayim, everyone holds that's a neder. Ki Yerushalayim is the Machlekes Alibud the Rabbi Huda, and Yerushalayim is nothing. That would not make a neder. Fine. So, is at the top of Amud Beis. Satanya, we learn in the Brisa. Chulin, ha chulin, kechulin. If somebody says, right, that which he eat of yours is chulin, ha chulin, kechulin, bein she'oichel lecha, bein she'oichel lecha. So he says that which I eat of yours is chulin, or that which you don't eat of yours is chulin, mutter. That is mutter, because in this case, it's chulin. And even if he says the opposite, so we'll soon see what to infer, right? In other words, the only question could be that which I don't eat of yours is chulin, right? So what would the implication be? That which I don't eat of yours is chulin. That which I do eat of yours, right,
is carbon.
Is not chulin, right? Which so we have to see what the opposite is, right? So this Brisa says, "Chulin hachulin the chulin bein she'oichelecha bein she'lo'oichelecha mutter." That would be mutter. La chulin she'oichelecha, not chulin that which ate of yours, aser, right? That would be aser. La chulin lo'oichelecha mutter. But if he says, right, that which is not chulin lo'oichelecha, that I don't eat of yours, that would be mutter, right? That would be mutter.
Yeah.
So
Lo
right. So in other words, so let's see. So la chulin, right? Right. So there's two.
negative.
So, right. So there's two issues going on. There's la chulin. So the second statement was that the middle case was la chulin she'oichelecha is aser, and la chulin lachulin lo'echelecha, but not chulin that you don't eat of yours is mutter. So Reish Shimoni, who is the author of this, of the beginning of the first part, Reish Shimoni, Rabbi Meir, the last lay Michlal Lab Ad Hashemeh. It must be Rabbi Meir. Why? Because you go ahead and you start to infer from someone's statements. So let's look at the first line, right? So it says, if someone says chulin, that which I don't eat of yours, sounds like you can imply or infer from there, right? That not chulin, right? Not chulin, that which I eat of yours, right? So in other words, that's a korban. So in other words, according to the Reisha, right, this first part, we don't go ahead and infer, because if you say chulin, that which I don't eat of yours, that which I do eat of yours, is a korban. So the Gemara says, Ema Seifa. So let's look at the same. So the first part is not Rabbi Meir, right? So Ema Seifa, la chulin lo'eichelecha mutter. Not chulin, that which I don't eat of yours is mutter. So now, not that's it. La chulin. So right now we said that the Reisha, because it goes both ways, so that we can't infer, because if you do infer, then you can actually learn the opposite. In other words, it says not chulin, that which you don't eat of yours, right? Meaning, or no, excuse me, chulin, that which I eat of yours, sounds like not chulin.
Not permissible.
I said it wrong again. Chulin, that which I don't eat of yours, sounds like that which I do eat of yours is not chulin, which would be aser, but we said it's mutter, so it can't be Rabbi Meir. So let's look at this statement. So the last statement says the Amos Eva. So now this was going on the third statement, third case. Lachulin la'eichelecha, right? Not chulin, that which you don't eat of yours. We say is mutter, right? Now, Vatana, we learn in the Mishnah, la korban la'eichelecha. A person says to somebody else, la korban, right? La'eichelecha. So a person says, that which I go ahead and I is a korban, I shall not eat of yours, right? La korban la'eichelecha.
Local. The double negative again.
Right. So let's see. Right. So now we're going to have to understand this. La korban la'eichelecha. So a person says, right, the way we've been saying it with a, right, with a, I guess with a pasa, right? So it says, la korban la'eichelecha, not a korban, that which you don't eat of yours. So Rameir Iser. Rameir says Aser. So how do you say, why does it sound like? Because not a korban, that which you don't eat of yours, sounds like that which I do eat of yours is a korban. Now, over here, Rabbi Meir Paskins, Aser.
Opposite.
1 second, I thought Rabbi Meir doesn't make any inference into one's statement. The Kashlon, because he didn't say it beferish. He didn't say that which you eat of yours is a korban. He just said that what you don't eat of yours is not a korban. Sounds like that what you do eat of yours is a korban. So so Rabbi Abba Nasa Kaimer lekorban yiyeh lefichach lo'eichelecha. When he says over there la korban lo'eichelecha, he's not saying not korban. He's basically saying lekorban, right? To a korban, and therefore basically saying your food to me is a korban. Therefore, lefichach, I can't eat of yours. All right, so we basically break up the statement, the sentence twice, and that's why it says aser.
Or another.
So that's a good question because the item is, but over here it uses a lashon neder, but we know that really a nedar more take place upon the object versus a shvua, which is the person's actions, right? But so he's making it in this case that that he can't eat from him, right? Which is
More like a shvua.
right. But anyways. Going back, I think the thing Ron deals with that earlier also in the Amud Aleph, but he says the korban, this item over here is the korban, and therefore, so he's saying beferish the korban. Therefore, lo'eichelecha. So hachinami. Why is hachi kamer? Why don't we say in our case, lay, right? Lo chulin liyeh lefichach lo'eichelecha. Right? Why does he say in this case, right? That so in this case he should say not chulin, right? Because that was the next case, right? La chulin, right? Not chulin, right? So therefore it should be aser. Not chulin should be the same as korban, right? So why does he say that in this case? Why don't we interpret right in this case, Rav Meir? So la chulin, right? Should not it doesn't work. It should work the same. It should be aser. La chulin meaning lo chulin. Right. Therefore, la'eichelecha. So why does the author of this Mishnah or this Brisa say la'chulin la'eichelecha? No, it's not chulin, and therefore la'eichelecha I can't eat of yours is mutter. It should be also just like the korban. So my answer is so it could be that really this Tana holds like Rav Meir in one case, right, and argues him in another case, right? So the last name of Lav Atashmein. It could be that in the Reisha he holds like Rav Meir that holds that we don't infer, and therefore the first cases of chulin hachulin kechulin is mutter, right? Ben shacha ben shalayichlecha, right? And therefore he holds like Rav Meir miklav lavat hashemein, and therefore that case is mutter, right? And ha'adam, and then the other case, right? And then he argues in the case over there, but korban in the case of there when he says korban la'eichlecha, he argues. And Rav Ashi Amar. Hadamar lachulin, hadamar lachulin, the hadamar lachulin. Right? In other words, maybe it's like this. One, when he says lechulin, right? Not lachulin with a pasach, right? Not chulin, rather lechulin, right? It's chulin.
Shva.
Or the shva, right? So therefore, the chulin, right? The hadamar lo, right?
Is positive.
Right, and therefore lechulin is different than lachulin. They work opposite, right? So therefore, in the case of where it says lechulin, right, lo'eichelecha is mutter, so that works out okay, right? And in the case of lachulin, but the other case, not a kasha, because over here he's not it's saying lachulin, right? And lachulin, the mashalo to have a chulin el kakurv. So therefore, you can say that the difference like this, according to Rabbi Meir, right? Lachulin and lachulin is two different things. One is with a shva, right? And the other is with a pasach, and therefore that would work the opposite. So that's how you understand to answer a Meir. That was Rav Ashi says. And Tar, the Tame, so two dot quote for the mission, Tar, but Tame, Neisar, Pigel, Asa. Now,
Comments. It would have to be right? It would have to be a comment.
What's that? I would say,
Because it's head up.
yeah.
And sure.
One second, I'll tell you. L'chul mishvat takas lamed hilkach. Yeah, the pasuk. Yeah, fine. Now, I was not incorrect. Now,
don't need to know the
but so Torah, Tame, Neisar, Pigel, Asa.
Right.
So if one says, so that now we have the next cases in the Mishnah. He says, Tar, Vitame, Neisar, Pigel, right? The item, right, is Tame or Tahor or not Tahor, right? And Neisar, Pigel. So we say that works. So boy, remember, Chama, Hare alai kabasar zibche shlamim, liachar zrichas dam, mahu. So now we mentioned that a person has to do tvisa, right, on a davar that was neither something that an item that was made usher through a nether or through a vow, such as like a korban. Now, if a person says Hare alai kabasar, this is to me like a basar from a shlamim after the zrichas dam. After the blood has been thrown on the mizbeach, so once the blood is thrown on the mizbeach, then now all of a sudden the meat becomes permitted to be eaten. So is he saying that this should be permitted to me, right? Like meat is permitted afterwards, and therefore he's not making a lashon neder. Or maybe he's talking about a shlamim in general, which in general it's usher up until the time that it's mutter to eat. In other words, the animal is mutter, right? It's a regular animal. Then he's makdish the animal, and all of a sudden it's as a shlamim, and therefore the animal is designated as a shlamim, and therefore it's prohibited. And maybe he's talking about through that period of time, and therefore that'll be usher. Or does he or not? So let's see. So mahu. Either come bahadin lishabeit visa kamatis, bater kamatis. If he's just saying like this lashon over here, when he says after zichas dami, he's being very specific, and he's saying it should be mutter, right? He's not being matvis and the davar aser, rather matvis something which is mutter, i.e., you mutter to go ahead and enjoy your shlamim. The machis basar zivchei shlamim, umachis zeter gabe, right? So he has a piece of shlamim in front of him, right, which is after. Let's say after the zrikas damim, and he has another piece of meat there. The Omar zeh kazeh, and he says, "I make another right that this piece of meat, right, is like this." Now, what's he saying there? The Omar zeh my beikaro kamatvis. Is he being the ikar? In other words, this animal or this meat was a shlamim, and a shlamim was prohibited, right, and up until now, but it was prohibited. The ikar. Shlamim is aser until it's mutter, so therefore maybe he's saying it's aser. Or maybe he's being matvised in its current stage, which is mutter. So Rava says, let's see. So Tashma, come and listen. Neisar upigel. Now our Mishnah says Neisar upigel. Now, interesting to note, right? Which we didn't point out in Mishnah, but we'll point out now. The surim of Neisar and Pigel don't come about necessarily, right, by one's neder, right? You don't make something, right? You don't make something Neisar. You don't make something Pigel by saying this item is Pigel, right? That occurs through a separate issur that comes from kudshim, right? So the prohibited part of nadarim really come from when I make an animal kudshim, it's hektish, it's prohibited. But the Neisar and the Pigel is really another issur that comes from the situation. That I didn't do something right, and I didn't really create it with my neder, right? It came through about the actions, whether I left it over or the avoda wasn't done, or it wasn't done privately, right? And nevertheless, it comes after zrikas dam. So now it says Naisar Pigel, and we see it works. And when does that happen? That happens after Zrikas Damim. So if we say that which I went ahead and was not visit to something which is after Zrikas Damim, right? I.e. Naisar Pigel. So the Shlamim here, after Zrikas Damim, is mutter. So maybe that which I say this piece of meat should be like that goes even at the stage of Leachar Zrikas Damim, because Naisar and Pigel are both after Zrikas Damim, right? Naisar is it's left over, day or two later, whatever, when depending on the carbon, how many days you have to eat it, right? And the Pigel is also done Leachar Zrikas Damim, right? Yeah, so it's a ran takes out the Pigel, right? Because over there the Pigel can be done actually by the Shechita, right? Right. So we say it there, right? Because over there, because that comes, Pigel can come before Zrikas Damim, right? So never is Naisar Pigel with Leachar Zrikas Damim. Who? So Amar Le Rav Huna Bereda Nasan, the Naisar Shel Oila. We're talking about the Naisar Shel Oila, right? In other words, there was never a permitted time to go ahead and eat the oila, because the oila is an animal which entirely gets consumed upon the mizbeach. So there was never a time of when the carbon was mutter to eat, and then it became naisar. And when it says like naisar, we go le'achar zrikas damim when it's usher, as opposed to the point in time when the carbon was mutter, before the naisar, right? So over here, we're talking about naisar shel oila, right? So amalei excuse me. Listi kabasar oila, right? So it should have said kabasar oila. Why do you have to say naisar oila? Just say like the basar of oila, right? The basar of oila. So he says, "Lo boy, come on, love you, boy, basar oila the aser." Didn't only teach you was such a big finish. They said this should be like the meat of an oila, which is always aser. Dog carbon come out this, right? Aser. Dog carbon come out this, right? Naisar pigel the oila it's stricha. But however, Naisar Pigel of the oila that we needed. Why? Because Naisar come in Kisser Naisar Kisser Pigel. Maybe they come out this bedavar aser. Loy matis the loy mitzer. Maybe over there, it's only referring to something which is a davar aser. All right, right. In other words, that a davar aser is something that is intrinsically has an outside. All right. Now the Gemara is like like turning ships right now, right? It's saying that no, it's from a different angle. That over there, those cases, that's an outside isser. It's not an isser of prohibited from eating because I said it's like a carbon, right? It's an isser of a separate isser, right? Isser of naisar and isser of pigel, and therefore it would be like I'm saying, like this animal, like meat should be like a treifa, right? Or something which is an isser on its own, not something that became from a person's nether, and therefore would not be aser because a person makes such a nether, it will not be chal. It has to be chal on something that you created, right, through a nedarim, right? That's aser. So kamash malon that we don't say that it's matvis bedavar aser. Rather, we say that one who says daisar or pickle, right? Then it would be considered to be something which was created. The isser was created through a nether. Right. So what is something that is right? So we say now. I'm sure you say right? Or so a person says, I will not eat meat or I will not drink wine like the day that we'll soon say the yard site, the day that my father passed, referring to the Yom Misa. On that day, he didn't partake of it. He heard on that day. Or the day he saw Yerushalayim B'Chavana in his ruins, or when the Tzom Gedalia, right, on that day. Right, or skip one, or the day his Rebbe died, right? The Omar Shmuel, and Shmuel says on that, the who shanader b'ayisayim, when he made a nether on that day. In other words, that it happened to have been the same date, right? That his father died or his Rebbe died 10 years earlier, right? And he's saying right. So. Well, we'll see, right? Not exactly, right? So we'll say, right? So what does Shmuel kind of say? So Lavka going to the Koi Bechad B'Shava, the Misbei Avua, right? So he doesn't say the date, right? He says, let's say on the Sunday, right? That his father died the first Sunday of the month, right? Or his Rebbe died, right? Now, his father died 10 years earlier, okay? And the day his father died, he didn't eat meat or wine. So he's saying, this should be answered to me on the day that my father died. But the day his father died was, let's say, the first Sunday of the month. And since then, there have been many first Sundays of the month when he ate wine and or he drank wine and ate meat. And nevertheless, we go l'isser, we're referring to the actual day, Tani Yasser. And not the other 9 years, not the other 9 years that he ate meat during those days, rather referring to the one-time then.
So the first day of that month, the first day of the month, first Sunday of each.
First, no, the month that his father died.
Okay.
Now, so the Gemara was questioning. We're still going back to the question earlier about the shlomim, right? By the shlomim, we had the question of, okay, he says this should be like this, right? And we say, okay, so does he mean that it should be its current state, right? That the thing is mutter, or do we find that the shlomim at one point in time was usher, and he's really referring to that point in time? Now, there have been many first Sundays of the month, and nevertheless, we go back to the first Sunday of when his father died, and he was prohibited, and he didn't eat or drink wine, right? So, or eat meat or drink wine. So, Shmami, no, what we see here, but Ikru Matvis, he's going on the Ikr. In other words, the main time was the day when he died, and therefore I'm referencing that. So too by this piece of meat, I'm referencing, right, that it was a shlomim, it was aser. Yeah, enochinami now is mutter, but it was a shlomim, it was aser. So Shmami now, be'ikru de matis. So we see over there that he's been matis in the iser, right? So the Gemara says no. The Shmuel hachikama. Maybe Shmuel saying like this. Amar Shmuel v'hu shanidar uba me'oisa hayayim be'elech. Right? We're talking about a case, all right, when he was, and I was every year, right? All the time he was going, and every first Sunday he would go ahead and not partake. So therefore, it was all this, it was all the days, right? Like you said, like in the yard side, right? And the entire time, he says, in other words, from that time when his father died, every year afterwards, he would not have wine and would not have meat, and therefore there was no. That was the reason why it's usher, because this Sunday was always usher. And Amar Ravina, so says Ravina, Tashma, come and listen. Kechalas Aaron ukuchumasa. Mutter. A person says, right, that which I eat of yours, or that the food of yours, will be like challah of Aaron, i.e., the challah that's mafresh and kuchumasa. And it's truma, right? That which is separated from it, right? That which is chumasa. So mutter. So sounds like over here. So in this case, ha kachumas lachme taida aser. So we say over there in that case. So over here the Ran learns out, right? They just look at the bottom Ran. Choose the short rounds for you guys, right? So he says the 2 lines from the bottom. It says over there, all right, the avogad the kriya shem b'ishas. So even though that by designated by calling it becomes aser, came on the aser the kol, right? Since it's not aser to everybody, right? Still mutter to kohanim, right? Levi's shaking his head. Yeah, I get some of that, right? Came on the aser because Kohen, right? Aser the kol. Davar aser mikri. It's called davar aser. Now I'm just designating it for kohanim. I didn't make it a davar aser, right? I don't know what you mean to use the word davar aser, right? Because it means something else here, right? I didn't designate it to become something which is an isser through my neder, rather just designated for kohanim only. Yisrael eats it. Okay, it's a separate halach, but it doesn't make it usher through my neder, right? It just designates it as challah, right?
For the Yisrael though?
Yeah, it does make it, even though it makes it usher for Yisrael, but I haven't made it an item that's usher because it's still mutter to the kohanim. It's still mutter to go ahead, right? It's not right by hektish when the animal is designated. No one can use it until the animal is offered. So therefore, that animal is usher l'kol, right? So can I say l'kol davar usher miki v'loy davar another? It's not considered to be a davar another, and therefore, if I go ahead and do my tfisa, if I attach someone's food to such an item, I say your food to me is like that. I have not made a neder. But if he says ha trumas lachmei toda, but the truma of the toda, that would be us, right? And then just right, that was considered to be a davar matfis for davar neither, since that's coming from an animal, a toda, right, an offering. So therefore, an offering is in the category of davar another, and therefore it would be us. So we see over there that truma, the lachmei toda, when are the breads, right? When are those taken? That's after that's after the zrikas adama. They offer the animal, and then they have the different loaves that are taken, right? The 40 loaves, right? The one of each different category. Right? So you see, it's after the zrikas adama, right? So therefore, that he's referring, and it's usher. So even though there's a heter lachar zrikas damim, but his neder is referring to the part before the zrikas dam. He's nitfas b'ikara. So too in the case of the shlamim, even though the meat now is mutter afterwards, but before zrikas damim, the main part was aser, right? And therefore, the tfisa of a shlamim should be chal, because just like the lachmei toda, we're saying aser because going talking about referring to before, right? The zrikas damim. So too b'ikara. So over here. So when it says ema kitrumas halishka aser, right? So he says, no, let's say over here, that is referring to the truma of the lachmei toda, maybe it's ketrumas halishka, right? The truma of the lishka, which in general, right, which is referring to the items that were given to the lishka, right? Nothing to do with the toda. It's not trumas lachmei toda, rather trumas halishka. About trumas lachmei toda,
we're talking about the money that was put.
Right. In other words, we're not referring to any more of the loaves, right? We're not talking the trumas lachmei toda, which is separated from of the 40 loaves. There's one from each, right? There's 4 sets of 10, right? Different types of chametz and 3 types of right. The scalded, right?
Right.
So wafers, right? So we're not referring to the truma, the one loaf of those taken from each 10. Rather, referring to something completely different. We're talking about trumas halishka, right? Money and stuff that were given to the mizbeach, and that's why the neder works. So the Gemara says, "Aval trumas lachmei toda mai." So you say what? The trumas lachmei toda is not referring to that. That's what? That's my mutter, right? So lisni lachmei toda v'kol shekein trumasa, right? So why did you say lachmei toda are mutter? And certainly, right, trumasa, that would just take up the lachmei toda. So hakamashman trumas lachmei toda trumasahi. So now, because now it's coming to teach us that the trumas lachmei toda is also the same as the it's trumasa from the toda, and therefore be mutter. Or v'bay sema trumas lachmei toda nami kaidem zrikas damim, right? Even the trumas lachmei toda, it does not from before the zrikas damim, right? We want to say trumas lachmei toda is after zrikas damim. Could it even be separated before? Who kigain that he separated while they were eating. In other words, before they went ahead and prepared the loaves, right? They're made in different ways, right? There's the 10 chametz. There's a 30, right? One is made in a wafer, one is made like a bagel, right? So the different kinds scalded, right? So right? So he says over there, like that, you're allowed to go ahead and if you go ahead now, you're supposed to go ahead and make it 40 and then go ahead and make it. But if you make it instead of each one being 10, each one is just one giant one, then you separate afterwards. Yatza. It says you have to go ahead and it should be 40, then not 4, right? So the mitzvah. So the mishkat truma, but you have to go ahead and separate, the truma for the kohanim from the of the 10 loaves. Yeah. So the shakel chad rifta al kula, and if you want to say, okay, he took one for all of them, right? You can't go ahead and take from one loaf all for the others, or use one for the others. So if you want to say that, okay, he took a portion from each one, but whether so a person who shalayita prusa, right? So you should not take one piece. right? Rather, we're talking about a case of where he separated while it was being needed. The shakal chada michametz, v'chada michalas, v'chada mirikikim, v'chada mirevucha, right? That he took. In other words, that he has to go ahead and go ahead and take one from each. So therefore, you're allowed to go ahead and take b'mafresh. In other words, they first needed it, and then they took it from that which they needed it. They took it out, and then they went ahead and they prepared the loaves that way. But they took it from the dough after the kneading, but before they went ahead and prepared the loaves. And therefore, in this case, it would not answer our case, because over here we're talking about a case where it was possible that the lachmei toda was not referenced in the la'achar zrikas dam, and rather they took the truma from the lachmei toda before the animal was offered and before the loaves were gone ahead and prepared, and that's when nevertheless it was still considered to be asur. So one last thing before we go to minion. So let's say it's machlekes tonight. Hare alai kebechor. Actually, one second. What time is it now? All right, maybe we'll stop here, because over here it goes to the new sugya that actually moves pretty quickly. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we will go ahead and